Hey, I'm going to say something.
Say something.
I did.
Good job.
You want me to say it again?
No, you're good.
Okay. Good deal. Glad to hear it. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mark.
Good to see you, Justin.
It's good to see you
Yeah.
in this lovely setting.
Yes.
It's a little bit darker,
A little bit darker.
a little bit rainy this
A little
morning.
bit rainy this morning. I'm glad it's not as humid as it was last night, though.
Whew.
Yeah.
It felt like it was raining. Even though it wasn't.
Oh, only it wasn't. Yeah. Yeah. It was a little humid. But that's all right, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a question for you. Yeah, you good? Are you ready?
We'll see. We'll see.
Go ahead and take your sip of coffee. I'll fill the gap there for just a
You're gonna
moment.
put one in the chamber and fire it. All right, let's go.
Welcome to How I See It with me, Mark Pratt, and
Justin Sternberg. This is a podcast that works to counter cultural polarization through thoughtful conversations.
when was the last time you laughed at yourself? How long has it been, if you will? And what was the circumstance?
I actually can't remember.
Really?
Yeah. I don't think I laugh at myself very much.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's an indicator, but I think there's something to be said for the ability to laugh at ourselves.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah?
Yeah, I agree.
Can hear better now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying me not doing it means I don't think it's good. I just don't recall.
Yeah, that's fair
Yeah.
enough. I definitely, that was one out of left field, that kind of thing.
What about you?
Let's see. I would say probably around, last week in the process of, mom's death and that kind of thing, because it's just, there's probably a level of intensity and sometimes laughter is that way
Yeah.
of coping, for me with that, and yet I can admit in that dynamic that I'll make a mistake or I'll fall into a pattern, in my family system. And I know there was times when I'd say, nice job, or, not necessarily, but it was to the point of recognizing that I had done something that I probably wouldn't have otherwise done. And I laughed at myself kind of in that process of being able to say, yeah, okay, that's who you are, that kind of thing. And it's just kind of been
Like, what's an example if you can give one? I'm trying to
you think?
I'm trying to understand or trying to picture. I'm trying to picture it.
Sure. Like in the process of having a conversation and you're explaining what you're doing, or you're kind of, I'll preface. Okay. There are those in my family who might think that I'm fairly intense. Okay. And maybe there's those outside my family. I don't necessarily see myself as an intense person.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
I mean, I guess it depends on how you define intensity, but
yeah.
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 There you go.
Is I think there's an aspect of intentionality that is intentional.
And
If
engaged. I would also call you engaged.
Sure.
So if you put those together, I guess,
I could be intense.
one could call that intensity. But
Sure.
Sure.
Or even
I typically think of
even
that.
disciplined.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
I typically think of intensity. That person's intense is
There's a seriousness
in your face.
Yes.
Yeah,
like
okay.
things are serious.
Yeah.
And I think there is that point, where, and we've talked about that. I think I talked about that even in the parenting dynamic, when we talked about parenting and the ability to kind of say, maybe in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have taken myself so seriously at times as my
Yeah.
role as a parent. Okay. So in that family dynamic, sometimes when I'm having these discussions, I will find myself laughing based on the fact that, yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
And when it's being called out or addressed, or I see myself doing that very same thing that we've kind of identified,
Yeah.
I'll laugh at myself.
Gotcha, yeah.
Just because I'll just say, yep, you did it again. Not in a, demeaning fashion, but just in a fashion that has an awareness.
Yeah.
And I kind of laugh at myself.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Does that make sense? That's kind
I'm
of
caught up now.
And I think, in that process, there can be an intensity, and I'm willing to recognize for a lot of people, this seriousness or intensity or even maybe a perfection can be circumstantial. Because we talked about excellence, and it's kind of been out of that too that I've kind of had some conversations about, when is it too much? Like you had shared on your, when you're coding, sometimes you can go so far in that, desire for perfection that you don't get anything done. Yeah. And so it's funny because yesterday morning I happened to be just driving down the road, and and there was it happened to be a woman. I'm not saying, but there was a lady. It was like right on my bumper. It's like, and it's like, wow, this is a little intense. Granted, 211 can get intense, but it was like I finally got to the point where I just kind of slowed up and waved her on by, and and she gave me this look, and and not to say that a guy couldn't do that as well, or or that I haven't done it. It just happened to be, and it made me think about, wow, that was pretty. She was pretty intense in that moment, pretty serious, and
that's what I think of. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's like of course there's that part of us when someone is being intense towards us, we'll say something to the effect of, well, maybe you should have left 5 minutes earlier, and then you wouldn't have to be so intense or so serious. But it kind of came to my mind as it's like, seriously,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
So that's kind of where that thought was coming from, and I was thinking about it in the context of what makes that for us as individuals, and how seriously. Because I honestly looked this up. I looked up to see if there was a serious assessment. If you could tell. I probably should have maybe.
This kind of ties into our swimming analogy too a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah. Carry on. You looked it up.
I looked it up, and it was all about risk assessment in business and stuff like that. I know you and I have talked about it before that you have a way of searching things. You just put in 2 words, and it comes up what you want. And I put in the whole sentence, and it's like I get way over in the weeds. But I couldn't necessarily find it. But it made me think about it as far as, okay, how seriously do we take ourselves? And what makes that difference? Thoughts?
So, like everything, you'd probably say it's a continuum, right?
But the interesting part of it is there's probably a continuum, and yet I would also say that I might be in different spots on that continuum based on the circumstances that I'm in.
Yeah.
And I might even just be, it's funny because I could imagine, or I could see it for myself and other individuals, even shifting dramatically on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like that, you make me think of the driving situation and when I've been in that situation, rushing, right? And,
sure.
And I was just talking to someone about this the other day too, and the thing is, when we choose poorly, we don't leave on time.
Sure.
Right. Whatever it is. Our first thing is not like, well, I need to be humble and, get to work and apologize and just, I need to do better. And you know what I mean?
Sure.
We're like, but I'm fine. And we get in the car and we go, and everyone else, you're
Get
against
out of my
me.
way.
If it wasn't for you, I'd be a perfectly fine citizen at work on time, but it's all your fault. Mark, if you didn't have that trailer, then you wouldn't be in my way. And whatever.
Seriously?
Seriously?
Come on.
Come on. Why are you even on the road?
That's right.
And, driving is or kind of this road situation is something that's pretty universal that we can kind of all snap into and go, yeah, I recognize that in myself and certainly in others,
Yes.
this kind of anger, and it's outsized, right? It's like, we get so, I guess, serious in the car and what our expectations of those around us are. It's like, I don't know, we turn into these monkey versions of ourselves that can't be civilized, and
Sure.
kind of like extend that empathy to that person. Like, well, maybe there's an issue with their tire, so they're not willing to go beyond this speed, and it's a safety thing, or perhaps they're not in a hurry because they got up on time,
Yeah.
or whatever. And I don't know, I've me and a lot of the guys that I do accountability with, that's like a common thing that we kind of joke where we do. I guess that's an example where we kind of laugh at ourselves. We'll kind of reveal some of the situations while driving that made us frustrated, because that's that one of the questions is talking about things that makes you angry or causes you to have a grudge or whatever. And so it's like that's a common theme of just like, well, drivers some days, And we're able to kind of laugh at it a little bit because in that context, right, I would say we're attempting to be the most polished version of ourselves. That's why we're even in the room doing that,
Sure.
And we can look at that monkey version of ourselves and just kind of chuckle,
Yes.
seriously, like
I did that.
yeah. So driving is just one of those things that can just instantly put us back into that monkey brain, that version of ourselves that we're trying. I think most of us, a lot of us, hopefully listener, you are, like trying to be this better version of yourself, but it's like, once you get behind that driver's seat, well, my better self is left outside the door until I get back out. It's like it reattaches.
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, driving's not the only time where we'll do something like that. And I recognize in myself, especially, I would say early on in our marriage, man, this podcast makes me look like a real bad husband, but that's okay. Like whenever something would go wrong, if I couldn't find a scapegoat, I would go to Megan for some reason. I'd be like, why'd you do whatever? It's like the driving thing. It's like, you didn't do anything.
That was your default.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when we feel guilt about our own actions causing us pain, we look for scapegoats. I think that's a pretty common human trait.
Sure.
And so then we get so serious, right? Because it's like, well, if you wouldn't have, that person wouldn't have, it's like, we're trying to find a reason why we did it wrong. It's not because I did it wrong. It's because the world is wrong or you're wrong. And
if you hadn't done that, that one thing.
Yes.
Because that one thing was the thing that set me off.
Yeah. So, I mean, driving is a good example of that, but I feel like there's many areas where we could be triggered into that if, we let our monkey brain take over.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That's where I was at, and just kind of thinking about that in that context of, this ability at times to take myself too seriously. Or and granted, as I was wrestling through it, thinking of, granted, we could call it pride, I suppose, that kind of thing. But it was that word serious that came to my mind as far as, okay, how often do I laugh at myself? Do I take myself, more seriously? Oh, and another conversation reminded me of it was the ability that I have to how comfortable I am doing something new.
Okay, yeah. And the
because
ability to laugh through it, or the opposite of that, like super embarrassed and
or I just don't even do it.
yeah.
Because I don't want to look like I don't have, all the capabilities necessary. I'm not even necessarily willing to learn.
Yeah.
Because whenever we're learning something new, if I'm watching someone learn something new for the first time, I'm not going to be very judgmental.
Right.
about-
Expectations are pretty low.
Yes. But yet, if I'm a pretty serious person and I don't do something well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna start probably. There might be another time when I'm starting to shift on that continuum. It's like I'm taking myself pretty seriously, so I'm not gonna, laugh at myself. And yet, have you ever played that the game Speak Out?
I don't. That doesn't sound familiar.
It's where you basically take a little plastic cartridge and you put it in your mouth. So it
Super
stretches,
wide. Yeah.
it stretches your lips and so the ability to pronounce P's and T's, and then you have these phrases you read.
Yeah.
And of course it doesn't sound
Like onomatopoeia.
not quite, but yes, the enunciation isn't there. But still in that process, I do that with individuals just to kind of provoke this discomfort and the ability to say, okay, because the second time around, it's not as I'll ask, how did that feel?
You'll do that in
in
counseling?
session, especially with kids or something. When they're feeling this level, a heavier level of expectation.
Yeah. Do you do it with him?
Oh yeah. That's probably another area where I'll laugh at myself.
Yeah.
Because it is, and then the cartridge.
I thought you just like to make them do it and laugh in their face.
Oh no.
You can't say it at all.
But everybody gets a different phrase. You read
yeah.
cards and so forth. So yeah, I will do it with that.
Do you clean it between sessions?
Yes, I do. There's another story behind that. But,
Oh boy.
yeah, hot water at the church. It just takes forever to get there. So I'll boil a pot of hot water like I'm making coffee and then pour it in the sink just to have hot water. But yeah,
Nice.
I make sure they're clean. But it is one of those things, it's like as I have this high expectation or this ability to think that I shouldn't make mistakes.
Yeah.
And then what do I do even in the context of making that mistake?
Yeah. That's very yeah. I definitely can think of when I was younger, I've talked about this before. I struggled a little bit with some self-esteem, self-confidence, that whole thing, and it really was about don't ever mess up. Don't ever mess up. You messed up. What's wrong with you? Why would you mess up? Anger at myself. So there was definitely like when I was younger, I got mad at myself a lot because I embarrassed myself, and then I'd be like, "You jerk,"
Sure.
Why would you do that to yourself? Kind of thing, and it was very, very much what you're saying about new things or things that I shouldn't necessarily be amazing at, or even things I should be good at or whatever, supposedly. And sometimes you make mistakes, and I did not have the ability to laugh at myself. And I will say, honestly, the thing that kind of unlocked that in my brain to go, sometimes I mess up, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Because I mess up sometimes. I'm a human being, and every other human being messes up. The thing that kind of unlocked that and gave me a sense of freedom in that was my first time in Celebrate Recovery, going through the step studies. When we start, we were going around, you kind of talk about things that you struggle with, things that, mistakes you make, whatever. It's just like, we're all in this together, and just hearing you go around the room, everyone kind of answers questions. You go, oh, okay. So that person's a human. Oh, and that one's a human. And that one too. Well, I guess I am too, so I'll admit it, and it's just like something unlocked, and I just realized, like, I'm going to make mistakes still, and it'll be okay. Like, I can just own up to them and take myself less seriously.
Yeah.
I don't think I got so, far enough past that to where I could laugh at myself very often.
Sure.
I think I probably still take myself too seriously, but certainly there's some grace there for myself but it also depends on the context too. Like
Yeah.
if the stakes are high or again, going back to the other thing I was saying, if I had made a mistake already to start me down the wrong path and then I make another one, then the stakes are higher and I get frustrated more easily and,
Yeah.
yeah. So just generally becoming more responsible and making better choices has made a lot of that stuff easier because it's not like I'm not looking for a scapegoat for my own stupid behavior. You know what
Sure.
I mean? Stupid is a strong word because I think it's a pretty common thing when you're maturing is to not make wise choices because
Sure.
you're not quite convinced yet that it's
Sure.
that's yeah, get up early, but like I can do it. It's fine, and I know how to weave in and out of the traffic just right and get there on time. It's like you kind of have this invincible young person thing, right?
I hear you.
And enough of those times of getting stuck behind, Mark or whatever it is.
Or a school bus this time of year.
Right.
Yeah.
School buses, yep.
Yeah. What are they doing on the road? For crying
yeah.
out loud, we didn't have them for 3 months, 2
Yeah.
months, Now we got the...
Who invited you to the party? Yeah.
Right.
And there was certainly many times when I was in my teens rushing around that just really close calls,
Oh, wow.
like-
Sure.
bad accident type stuff where it kind of shook me. I'm like, you're stupid. Like, why do you think you can do this? And I was speeding ridiculous stuff. Like it was the metro area, the Twin Cities.
Oh, wow.
And I would be doing through traffic, weaving in and out and
Sure.
flying past people. And, the wrong person at the wrong time moves in the wrong lane without signaling. It's just like, I mean, we had a pretty significant event. I wasn't driving that time, but my friend was driving and we ended up doing this full like spin out thing on the
wow.
freeway, freaking cars out. I remember I have the image burned in my brain where we were doing like 90
Wow.
on the freeway and a car came in front of us. So he slammed on the brakes and the right wheel locked up a little bit and the whole car started to shift to the right to where I'm in the passenger seat and I'm looking at the direction we were going out my passenger
Sure.
window.
At a 90-degree
Right,
angle.
right.
It's like,
I mean, it was this little Honda Civic or whatever. So like it didn't roll thankfully or anything. I mean, it could have, right?
Oh, sure.
But I remember doing that, and then he kind of overcorrected, and we ended up doing that, swinging back to the other direction, and to the point where we finally slowed down, stopped, and it's like all the cars around us were stopped and slowed, and it was this intense thing. And that was like one of those things where it's like, ew. Anyway.
Might be taking ourselves a little too seriously.
Yeah.
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 That invincibility was
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's Superman kind of, yeah,
Complex, if you will.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a lot of story for, I don't know what point, but.
Well, you were talking about traffic
Stupid decisions.
and intensity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being young and thinking you don't need to follow the conventional
Sure.
wise routes.
Yeah.
And then as you get older, you kind of go, yeah, probably shouldn't speed like that anymore.
And the reality.
22 tickets later.
Yeah. And the reality of it is you can do all that, and it's like those 5 people that you pass will be right behind you at the
Yeah.
next stoplight.
Yeah.
In that context. But yes, there
Yeah.
was that moment that thought,
If
wow.
you speed right, you can avoid that. I'm just saying. I'm just kidding. Don't do it.
I understand. I understand that you were kidding. That you were kidding in that moment.
I mean, it was sort of this game where it'd be like, how far ahead can I wanted to know that the efforts I put in made a difference,
Yeah.
and yeah,
And it's funny how often those
I'm laughing
efforts,
at myself now, Mark.
Exactly.
This is good. This is
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny how often all of that effort can be negated
Yeah.
almost to
Yeah.
a certain point, when we're really thinking we're accomplishing something. And I think it's a valid point. We're thinking we're accomplishing something huge and big and nobody's ever done this before, and yet the next time it's like, oh, they're right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that it's that process of somebody. How many times let's be honest, how many times do you get frustrated going behind somebody at 55 miles an hour?
Oh, every time. Yeah. I mean, so here's the thing. We live in Southport, and, for most of our listeners, you'll know what that means. And there's just a lot of retired people, a lot of tourists who are kind of craning their neck looking at things. And so you're lucky when they go the speed limit sometimes.
Sure, valid point.
And so that really frustrates me. And I try, that's what we talk about in our little group, is just like, learning to have that patience, learning to leave on time.
You do this at the DMV, do you? You have your accountability.
This is probably a good idea. Have sessions. Yeah. But like, you used to be able to buzz across town in Southport, right?
Sure.
Especially when people went back to school. And, it was not as, it's just like, you can't do that anymore. Too many stoplights and too many people going 5 miles under the speed. You just have to account for it in your planning. And I think, it takes a little bit of stubbornness saying, I can do it. And, should be this way, it shouldn't be like that. And anyway.
Yeah, but it is.
It is.
And then how do we adjust? I think that's the other part of it. It's like, are we able to say, okay, this is the way it is, not just in traffic, but in my ability to, try something new, being able to extend to myself that it's like, okay, it's okay to make a mistake.
Yeah. Yep.
So what would, go ahead.
Well, earlier you're talking about when you see it often when people are learning new things. It kind of made me think of Ultimate Frisbee, right? When we have new people come out.
Sure.
And like they'll see us playing or whatever. And I'll just say this, like, as you come in as a newcomer, you think, Frisbee, I can throw a Frisbee.
Sure.
And I can run, like those are the two required skills, running and throwing a Frisbee and catching, I can do those things. And you think, I should be as good as those guys. And you immediately go out there and you're trying to throw across the field. You're trying, just doing things thinking that you can be that good or whatever. And it's
sure.
like,
you can do it just like that.
Yeah. So sometimes you see people taking it very seriously, very frustrated that like, oh, and I can't believe I couldn't get it to you kind of thing. It's like, well, yeah, it's hard.
Exactly.
Like it takes work and skills and learning and practice and getting your throws swatted down 100 times and dropping 100%. Like it's kind of demoralizing a little bit in the beginning because you think it's just a little Frisbee. Anyone can do that. It's like, it takes that learning, but you can see that learning process, how that can kind of trigger different versions of being able to laugh at yourself. And some people are really good at laughing at themselves as they start, and it's almost like, all right, stop laughing now.
Yeah. Take this a little more seriously, please. Yes.
Right? Like,
yeah.
You can kind of see that spectrum.
Oh yeah. And I that would be one area where I would admit I probably take myself a little too seriously at times.
Very intense, Mark.
I probably am. I am.
I'm like pot calling the kettle black.
That's okay. I'm going to admit that I am. And I'll admit part of that is I won't necessarily try. I haven't tried to even throw the hammer yet or anything, that's upside down or, I'm pretty much a short distance straightforward because I can admit I can't, I use that word, but I just don't have the ability to throw it as far as some other people. Mm-hmm. It's not a matter of learning. It's just a matter of, okay, I'm at this age and I'm just not going to be able to throw it like a 30-year-old.
I got you.
You follow me? Or a 40-year-old, that kind of thing. It's just, but yeah, so.
You can definitely tell those 30-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, they can throw it the distance of the field. It's like, no. Joseph probably can throw just about as far as I can, and he's coming up, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's something as you're talking about, it makes me think about the fact that, I'm probably not even trying at the level that I could try to maybe do a different throw. Sure, I'll curve it, every now, but it's going to be a pretty straightforward throw. I'm not going to do a forehand or, anything like that just yet. But yeah, that's probably an area where I'm taking myself too seriously. And I'm certainly, not necessarily laughing at myself when I make that wrong throw, because I'm bringing that intensity, that level of competition.
Yeah,
to
so
it.
sports is another one, right?
Sports is
Where
another one,
it
sure.
kind of bring out that monkey brain a little bit.
Sure.
I think speaking for myself anyway, where
So
if
and I think that's where I almost want to come back to in some ways. How would you describe that character, if I may say, a character flaw that puts us in the, as you call it, monkey brain, where we become reactive? How would you describe that character dynamic? What word would you use? I have one that's coming to my mind, but I just was curious.
I mean, you just said the word reactive, so now I can't get my brain off that word. But so that's a good one.
Okay.
I think I also want to think defensive, just like
Okay.
yeah, that's what I got.
I guess
off the top of my head.
and I think that was the funny part, because it's like, how would you describe that feeling, that circumstance, in one word? The one that kind of came to mind for me was maybe a little more pride,
Yeah,
because it is that thing that kind of is underlying.
yeah,
I don't want people to think that I'm not that.
at the level. Yeah,
You follow me?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And I think that pride can also keep me from trying something new, because, or laughing at myself. Here again, not going too far, because I think we can just laugh at everything, and then it doesn't seem like to other people that we are really even trying.
Well, you would probably agree. It probably doesn't matter what other people think, but a lot of times it is an indicator that
Sure.
I'm not really willing. It's a kind of the opposite version of I don't want to start, because it's kind of like I don't want to try.
Sure.
Right? So it's just I'm just gonna laugh through it, and you get what you get. Ha
Yeah.
ha ha. And it's like, well, you could try. you
Sure.
know? So that kind of thing.
And I think there is that part of us that might even be able to, that person that might laugh at themselves, we might even be able to be judgmental and say they're not even trying.
Right.
When they may be trying
Yeah.
to the degree that they can,
Yeah.
but they're just not taking it as seriously as we would like them to. I'm thinking back more to the sports analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Megan's really good about that, at not taking herself too seriously.
Yeah.
And
How do you notice that in her?
sometimes she gets that from me, like, why aren't you trying? Kind of thing.
okay.
She's like, I am trying. It's like, oh, sorry. Yeah. And then when Kelly gets there, the two of them, man, it's like they get laughing at themselves a lot.
Sure.
To the point where it's like, all right.
How do you-
But they do try. It's just like there's this connection that says if you're laughing at yourself, you're not trying. Because I do think that is a common defense mechanism to trying or whatever. But that's not always the case. I think that's a healthy way to be.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. I would think so.
Yeah.
Granted, they're again on that continuum of how often
And just so we're clear, like Megan's got it right in the terms of like Frisbee, where she'll laugh at herself. She'll have a good time, and sometimes, like you described, like, well, not sometimes. A lot of times, I'm intense, right? So it's like, when we leave, I'm kind of back into my chill zone. But like while we're playing, it's intense. And it's like you want to win, and I'd much rather be like her, and I continue to try to be like her, but it's hard,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it brings to mind even the personality dynamics.
Yeah, for sure.
That are involved with that process. I'm sure, as I was looking up assessments, personality, parts came into mind,
Of course,
and the whole,
makes sense.
and the whole, what's the, not enigma, what's the Enneagram? There you go.
Enneagram, yeah.
Yeah. The whole Enneagram, it's like I could have taken, an Enneagram test 5 times, in that process of kind of looking for an assessment.
Yeah.
But yeah. It was just interesting to think about how that comes into play. Because I was thinking about, I shifted back to the Enneagram.
Yeah.
But were you a 3?
4-1.
4-1. Okay.
Wait, no, 3-1. Sorry.
Okay.
3 is the like achiever,
Image. Yeah, achiever
type thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And 1's perfectionist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Not
yeah,
a good mix.
valid point. But yeah, and I think there again, I think that becomes a part of personality because
Yeah.
the perfectionist has
Yeah.
a difficult time making
Laughing
mistakes.
at themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to take
Yep.
things a little more seriously because of that desire
Yeah.
to.
What about you? What was your...
I'm a 3 also.
Okay.
I'm a 3 also. I really appreciate the help you gave me in redefining what that 3 was. Yeah, because what was it? Some call it a performer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which seemed like you're just looking to perform, but it is a
Yeah.
matter of kind of achieving in a sense of accomplishing.
Right.
But yeah, maybe even at times being able to laugh at yourself, the fact that you're able to accomplish learning
Yeah.
even in the midst of mistakes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I think the 3-1 combo, I never really thought about it, but that does make sense why it is hard for me to laugh at myself. And also why I would say, I do feel like it was such a good achievement to kind of learn to be okay with messing up.
Yes.
And it's still not easy for me. It's a fight, But you bring up personalities, and like whatever Megan's personality is I would say probably more geared towards being able to not be so serious. you know?
Sure.
And I think sometimes we go, well, that's her category and I'm this category, so that's what it is. But like this thing, like taking yourself too seriously, being able to laugh at yourself, it doesn't matter your personality. This is something to work at, to be,
Exactly.
to try and get better at. So wherever you are on that scale or that continuum, whatever your personality says you are,
Yep.
doesn't mean you can't go from where you are
That's exactly right.
to a better place in that
And
spectrum.
being able to recognize there's going to be circumstances
Yeah.
that I can work on individually as well.
Yeah.
To be able to say, okay, yeah, I may not just take up piano for the sake of learning something new, but I can recognize when I am driving from point A to point B, I can leave just a little earlier, and I can leave myself some time to be able to say, hey, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have to, be that aggressive,
Yeah.
in the process of daily life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can take this and apply it. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
a Band-Aid to a specific area and see if it
Exactly.
heals up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would think about it in that context of, from around, am I able to laugh at myself to a certain degree, or when do I notice that I take myself maybe a little too seriously?
Yeah.
Because I would say we all have that in different ways, and for most of us, one of those areas might be driving.
Yeah. 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 That's probably one of the more universal connections.
Sure. Yeah. So that's how I see it.
Hey, thank you for listening to our podcast. If you like How I See It, please do all the things that podcasts tell you to do. Subscribe, rate, review, follow us, and or talk nicely about us on social media. If you want to reach out, the email is us@howiseeit.click. Yep, I said .click, as in .click. Please tell your friends about this show, and we'll see you on the next one.